The reflexive verbs, they are very common in French, and first of all, we call them les verbes pronominaux. You might see it like this. So what is a reflexive verb? So basically, that is when the subject and the object of the verb are the same. In other words, if the person who does the action also receives the action, if you like. So I'll give you an example that will be easy to understand. Je me couche. Se coucher means to go to bed. Je me couche literally means I put myself to bed. So you can see that in bold here, I have me, which is my reflexive pronoun. And couche is the verb. Je me couche, I put myself to bed. Now, this action is done by me, and I'm also the object of the action. Compare with je couche mon fils. So we have the verb coucher, which is to put to bed, but in this situation, I say I put my son to bed. So the subject of the sentence, I, is not receiving the action. My son receives the action. Okay, so in this situation, it's not a reflexive verb. Now, perhaps this will help you understand the concept. Reflexive, so you've got a mirror, you can see that baby is looking, and basically reflexive means reflection. So the action comes back to the subject. That's a bit like a mirror. Perhaps that can help you understand the concept. Now, what does it look like? So, still using se coucher as an example, in the infinitive, the reflexive verbs have se in front of it. D'accord, of them. So, se coucher. Now, when I conjugate that verb in the present tense, it's going to be je me couche, tu te couches, il, elle, on se couche, nous nous couchons, vous vous couchez, et il ou elle se couche. The reflexive pronouns are in bold. Now you can see that for each subject, there is a form of the reflexive pronoun. So you need to make sure that there's an agreement between the subject and the reflexive pronoun. So these pairs, you need to know them. Je me, tu te, on se, nous nous, vous vous, il ou elle se. Then my verb itself, coucher, is conjugated like it usually is in the present tense. You can see that with je, it's end with an i, with tu, es, and so on. Now some more examples. Se dépêcher, to hurry up. Vous vous dépêchez de partir. You can see the pair, vous vous, and dépêcher ends with ez. S'habiller, to get dressed. Alors, s'habiller, you can see that there's an S apostrophe because the verb itself starts with an H. So, in front of an H or a vowel, the se becomes an S apostrophe. Tu t'habilles le matin. Same thing with the T. The T becomes a T apostrophe in front of the H. So, you get dressed in the morning. Se concentrer, to focus. Je me concentre sur mon travail. Et se tromper, to make a mistake. Nous nous sommes trompés. So I will get back to this, but here you can see with this last example that in the passé composé, we use être as an auxiliary verb. So every reflexive verb will use être as an auxiliary verb in the passé composé and all other compound tenses, like the passé composé, the plus que parfait, and so on. But I'll get back to this again. We often use reflexive verbs with part of the body when we say things like je me lave, je me coupe les cheveux, and so on. So in this situation, we will use the definite article rather than the possessive adjective. So it sounds a bit very grammatical and perhaps difficult to understand, so I'll give you an example. So if I want to say I wash my face in French, I'm going to say je me lave la figure. The la is a definite article, as opposed to a possessive adjective, which you use in English. You say, I wash my face. But here we don't really need to repeat the my face because it's actually already expressed in the reflexive pronoun. When I say je me lave la figure, it means that it's mine. So in French, we'll never say je me lave ma figure, d'accord? Because you would basically repeat yourself in a way. Je me suis lavé les mains. Again, that's the definite article. Not je me suis lavé mes mains. D'accord? Now with the negation. So the negation goes before and after the block that is made by the pronoun and the verb. So if you like the pronoun and the verb, they usually 99% of the time stay together. So the negation is going to go around. So let's look at it with different tenses. In the present, je ne me lève pas tôt. You can see that me, the reflexive pronoun, stays with the verb lever. In the imparfait, the same sentence, je ne me levais pas tôt. Again, you can see that the pronoun, the reflexive pronoun and the verb stay together and the negation goes around it, ne and pas. Je ne me lèverai pas tôt, in the future tense, same thing. Je ne me lèverai pas tôt, conditional. And ne te lève pas tôt, impératif. Again, you can see that the reflexive pronoun stays with the verb. Now, when we use compound tenses, so the reflexive verbs, as I've already mentioned, always uses être as an auxiliary verb in compound tenses, like the passé composé, le plus que parfait, le conditionnel passé, le futur antérieur. So I'll give you some examples. The negation goes around the auxiliary verb here. Okay, so let's look at it. Je ne me suis pas levé tôt. So that's in the passé composé. You can see that the ne and the pas are around the reflexive pronoun and the auxiliary verb. And then you have the past participle. D'accord? Je ne m'étais pas levé tôt. In the plus que parfait, again, you can see that the reflexive pronouns, the me, that becomes an M apostrophe here because of été, the ne and the pas are around the reflexive pronoun and the auxiliary verb, and then we have the past participle. Elle ne se serait pas levée tôt, same thing but in the conditionnel passé. And elle ne se sera pas levée tôt, same thing but in the futur antérieur. Now you can see here that because we are using être as an auxiliary verb, lever, my past participle, agrees with the subject of the sentence, elle. D'accord? Now, sometimes we do have a reflexive verb in the infinitive form, and this can happen especially with the near future, for example. So, in that situation, the pronoun is immediately before the infinitive. Je vais me raser. Se raser means to shave, so I'm going to shave myself. Or I'm going to shave, sorry. Je vais, and then me raser, the reflexive pronoun is close to the infinitive of the verb. Elle va se doucher. Se doucher is to take a shower. Se doucher is together and elle va is before. Now, reciprocal verbs. So we have different sorts of reflexive verbs, if you like, and sometimes it is actually a relationship. So they are pronominal, but with a slight difference. The subject and the object have a reciprocal relationship with each other in that situation. So I'll give you some examples. Nous nous connaissons bien. We know each other well. Okay? So when you know someone, it implies that that person knows you as well. D'accord? You have a good knowledge of each other. So usually you will see that in the translations of this sentence, we have this each other that comes back. Les enfants se battent. They are fighting with each other. You can't fight just by yourself. You need someone that fights back at you to have a fight. Okay? So that's where the reciprocal relationship comes in. Ou ils s'entendent bien, hein? They get along well with each other. You need someone else that gets along well with you to say that you get along well with that person. So again, it is a reciprocal thing. And so sometimes there is no logic. I mean, se promener, you can't really argue that you're walking yourself, but some verbs are pronominal despite the fact that in a way, it doesn't make as much sense as I wash my face. Okay, so it's something that you need to accept. So we've got like things like s'arrêter, s'amuser,